Greetings, Hotep, and welcome yet again to another live podcast of Building Legacy here with our illustrious family, village, nation, civilization keepers, where we learn, teach, act, share, and build. This is a broadcast that is every second and fourth Saturday from 3 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. UK. And the hosts are none other than African Queen Mother Warriors, my illustrious, most regal Sister Dr. Sandra Richards.
Greetings, beloved Sr.Dr. The most phenomenal, majestic, and divine, supreme one, African Queen Mother, Warrior Senate, Dr. ChenziRa. Give thanks. I love how we celebrate each other. I think it's phenomenal.
Exactly. And part of what we're going to be sharing today, of course, is to continue our ankhversations around things linked to all aspects of African building, nation building, village building, family building, personal development building, society, civilization, sovereignty, reparatory justice, reparation, self-determination, liberation, and other things that are all grounded inside of building legacy. And we are really pleased to be joined by our illustrious warrior energy.
Wow.
That really provides that sanctified masculine balance in our ramifications and engagements of all that is part of the divine feminine. There's also the divine masculine, and we're very humbled, very honored to have NswNebKaRa, Asar, Herishetapaheru join us.
Whoa. Grand Master.
We need you to unmute, NebKaRa.
Grand Master.
Yeah.
High teacher in our presence. So give thanks.
No, we cannot hear you, so we need you to unmute. There we go.
It is always an honor and privilege to be amongst the Netertu, those powerful feminine energies that are here resurrecting or reshore erecting our legacies and rebuilding our legacies. As we say it in our ancestral term, Seruj Ma'at, or it's the reestablishment of Ma'at for the betterment of ourselves, that we may reclaim what is rightfully ours, that will be reclaim it, act on it, live on it, and see it come to manifestation. One of the things that I love about this whole thing is that it isn't something we just talk about, it is something we have to live. And the best way to live something is to practice it. So you all are practitioners of this legacy, and I'm honored to be here to share this masculine energy so that we could add that reinforcement and that foundation that is needed. Ankh-Dua.
Ankh-Dua, Ankh-Dua. We knew that there was going to be a lot for us to engage in today, just with what's going on throughout the globe, right? So part of our iterations, part of our conversations, and what people refer to as discussions, conversations, talking points, were around, of course, what has transpired with the recent triple guilty verdict for the entity that was responsible for the execution of George Floyd. So we're very much so going to address that and look at it from a variety of lenses of how sisters and brothers handled that reality of that verdict in the US, in the Caribbean, in other parts of the Americas, in the UK, in Africa as well as other parts of the world, because there were similar elation that some degree of, if you will, justice was served. However, it's interesting that that happened while parts of the world were celebrating something quite different. It's also interesting what is taking place between now and the sentencing. So we'll talk about that. And then also looking at what are the other elements of institutionalized racism, sexism, etc., that give rise to providing support for this regularity, this common practice of not regarding African life as having value, as having worth, as being part of the need amongst our shared humanity. And there'll be other opportunities, because whenever we're having these versations around building legacy, we also get an opportunity to just talk about, what's going on in general. While this is happening, what distraction is it creating towards that? And what are some other things that we're doing, and some of the things that are allowing for us in the midst of all this chaos, the opposite of Ma'at, let's get that word together, Isfet, chaos, madness, how are we able to still navigate some degree of truth, justice, order, reciprocity, balance, divine righteousness, and harmony, so that we are able to move in the direction more correctly in that journey pathway with laser-like focus towards building legacies. So that's where we're intending to go. I usually have these really wonderful biographical sketches of our guests, and I do not wish to just give a common piece, so I will share part of the concise biography for those that aren't familiar with NswNebKaRa. NswNebKaRa Asar Kasamsura Herishetapaheru, respectfully known as NswNebKaRa, is a Kemet Nut Tamarian African and practitioner of the liberating natural living arts and sciences. With 45 plus years of experience, NswNebKaRa embraces heuristics, self-knowledge, and educational arts and sciences while engaging in intensive academic research and publication, practical training, and professional experiences that have led to his mastery, certifications, credentials in a variety of areas, inclusive of regional, national, international licensing in general contracting, residential, commercial, and industrial, sustainable land development, organic agriculture, farming and agribusiness, sustainable design and construction development, project management, real estate brokering and appraisals, law and jurisprudence, natural, international, common, and civil equity, martial arts and sciences, cultural griot and traditional performing arts, academic and vocational education, along with other interdisciplinary studies, spiritual therapeutics and counseling, alongside complementary arts and sciences. NswNebKaRa is the author of the Proclamation of the Sanctified Sovereign Ma'at Nation of Smai, Tawi, and Kemet Nut, alongside Uat Nefer Aha Awite and PerAnkh and Smai Tawi and Kemet Nut, The Way of the Harmonious Warrior Arms and Hands, Systems and Spiritual Warrior Teachings of PerAnkh of Smai Tawi, Kemet Nut, along with the forthcoming publication. Everyone send the email to remind us to get this hard copy out before June 21st, summer solstice 2021. Subtle hint. And that
Please say that again. Please say that again, Queen. Say that again. Just say it again. Give those of us who need to go grab something and write it. Yeah.
Yes, send the email.
Well, certain people have certain privileges. You could have the PDF copy right now, tomorrow, if you wanted to.
There you go.
Give thanks, but we want the globe. We want.
Well, stay at your sister so she could get it sent to you. Electronic mail is all we have to do. We can send it to you.
Correct. So
you'll be one of the first.
Absolutely. It's important to send an email to either PerAnkh at me.com, PerAnkh at me.com, or you can also send it to Smai Tawi, SMAI TAWI gmail.com. And just between now and June 21st, the summer solstice of 2021, the forthcoming publication by NswNebKaRa is entitled PerAnkh Ankhmes. And in his speaking with us today, he can speak more with a tremendous amount of detail on what that whole Ankhmes as a part of the mystery educational spiritual systems, bringing in the cosmogony, the cosmology, the astronomy, the architecture, the complete arts and sciences that are surrounding our house of life. And in that regards, I'll leave that portion right there. In addition, NswNebKaRa is a co-founder and the executive director of PerAnkh House of Life, a non-governmental, not-for-profit organization dedicated to culture, healing, arts, technology, and spirituality for life, inspiration, freedom, and education, Chats for Life. He is also the grandmaster and founder of the Spahayata and Smai Tawi Ariyanka system, its interpretive healing movements and breathing techniques, integrating methods of concentration and meditation, complementary to Kemetic yoga, Egyptian yoga, etc. And he's also the grandmaster and founder of the martial arts science and system of Uat Neferaha Awite, Paket U Sabaitun, translated as the way of the harmonious warrior, arms and hands system. NswNebKaRa is an ordained natural scientist, an elder spiritual guide, chief high priest of PerAnkh and Smai Tawi, and he is also a practitioner of holistic healing, psychotherapeutics, physical therapies, among other interdisciplinary arts and sciences that strengthen the body, mind, soul, spirit, and consciousness. And with that, I welcome NswNebKaRa.
That took like a whole half hour, it appears. Wow.
Okay.
We do this for every of all of our guests, and what is
okay, so I'm not something special then.
Oh no, you're special. We're not gonna say that. You definitely...
So let's get clear here. Let's get clear. You are special. That don't mean there's not other special people, but not everybody can claim to have the highness that you have. So let us just call it what it is and give thanks. I am so...
Oh, I'm giving thanks. It's 50 years of experience. Honestly,
I am so look. I am listening. No.
Well, what I'm going to say here is that I'm walking in the footsteps of those before me.
Give thanks.
Like Dr. Yosef Ben Yakanan and Henry Clark and others. And more so, when we study our ancestry and those of the ancient PerAnkh, those are the broad perspective that they brought. Because as cultural healers and keepers, it's not just limited to one particular thing.
I need to say this because I'm gonna be listening so keenly to your wisdom, what you bring and the legacy that you continue. Because sometimes people come along and think that they're the ones who created something that we can say we have learned from those that came before. That introduces a certain kind of educator, a certain kind of high priest to us, because in building legacy, it's important that we share that we are part of a continuum, and that this is not being done, that we share that we are part of a continuum. The ego takes over, or the Eurocentric system takes over, and one doesn't have the degree of humility balanced with the wisdom that I know we're gonna get today. So I am just so grateful for your presence. Look, this building legacy thing is serious, and we have someone special with us. So we're not taking that away from you, not at all. We give thanks for your presence. NswNebKaRa, this has been a long time coming. The world is waiting for your wisdom. We have people across the globe sitting, waiting to hear so that they know what they have to do, because a lot of people don't know what to do. I give thanks.
Well,
Africa, sorry, before you, African Queen Mother Warrior, you have to keep pulling me back in. You know, like when I get like, just pull me back in. Okay, I give thanks.
Do I want to?
Yes.
And with that, NswNebKaRa, we really welcome you sharing some of the elementary points as well as some of the more advanced points of wisdom and wise counsel that are linked. There are many elements I know you can speak to, and I just would really appreciate that you bring that vibration of the elements that are linked to building legacy.
Well, first and foremost, it is always an honor and privilege to be among such great esteemed warrior spiritualist queen mothers, because in our legacy, and a lot of people are not aware of it, and that's why it's very important, like our sister Dr. SandRa has said, SndDr has said, that it isn't something that we're making up. It isn't something that we're creating. It's a continuum. As the ancestors have said, once we had a mangamazi or a disaster caused by other humans, those of us who survived that has a responsibility to rebuild. We call it Saruj, to Saruj Ma'at, to Saruj Kamet, to Saruj Smai Tawi. It is a responsibility that we all have to rebuild and to re-establish the legacy of our ancestry. One of the things that in my years of being here and observing and researching and sharing have recognized is the fact that collectively, as a people, as a AfRaKan people, or some people call African people, we have lost a common sense of identity and purpose, for the simple reason that we have not identified with the greatness of our accomplishments and our legacies of the past. A legacy that it's so rich and so old in time that once you identify with that legacy, it gives you that foundation. It gives you that purpose upon which you can build our present legacy. In the West African terminology, it's called Sankofa. It's going back and fetching that and those principles upon which we can utilize today. We're not going to try to rebuild exactly what was in the past, but those principles, those legacies, and those teachings, and those wisdom that the ancestors shared and have left, just remind you, written in stone, built in edifices, written in myth stories called the mysteries in the heavens, using the heavens as an iconographic blackboard to write our stories, that they're written in eternity for us and then translated onto the planet in our temples and buildings and the layout of our entire 42 different state that we had, called Smai Tawi, or called Tawi, the two lands, the upper and the lower, built and laid out according to the stars in the heavens. That legacy is a legacy that we have to reclaim. And that is one of the greatest problems we have as a people collectively. We don't reclaim this legacy. And because we don't reclaim it, we don't have that common identity like other people have, such as those people who may claim they're remnants of the 12 tribes of Israel, or they're descendants of the 12 tribes of Ishmael, who today we call the Islamic people, the Arab people so-called, or the Christian vernacular, or the Chinese vernacular, or the Indian vernacular. As a so-called African people, we don't have that common identity. Dr. Cheikanta Diop said it well in his book, African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality. Until African scholars re-identify, reconnect with the history and the legacy of ancient Egypt, we cannot build a true common African edifice of morality and of politics, of economics, of culture, and a future for ourselves. Because that legacy is a legacy left by our ancestors that left the foundation for us to build upon. What are some of the things that they've left there for us? They left a language. We call it today Meduneter. Some people call it Mtuanter. Some people call it, like the Greek version, the hieroglyphs. And some also people call it the Ren-Kem, or the language of Kem. However, that is one of the things that the ancestors left, a common language in written form with all the laws and all the rules and regulation required for a language for spiritual teachings and for teachings for governance, that is to govern a nation, a kingdom. That's one of them. Second, mathematics. A system of mathematics, a system of counting and measurements, of geometry, of trigonometry, of surveying, as astronomy, engineering, building and architecture, all this within the mathematical, and coinciding with that would be the astronomical aspect of it, or the astrological aspect of it. A system of healing for health, system of nutrition, system of taking care of our bodies so that we can be healthy and strong. Because one of the sayings of our ancestors, and we always say this amongst one another, we always say life, health, and strength. Ankh, Uja, Sened. So there again is a system that we can utilize in its foundation form and bring into modern times, that we can build upon, that we could have our system of healing and health, which is also merged into the spirituality. In addition to that, a system of self-governance that is rooted in what we call Ma'at. As the ancestors says in their teachings, when Neber Techer, that which is the universal creative life forces, was bringing creation into being, and I don't say he, I would say Neber Techer because it has the masculine and the feminine in it. And Neber Techer went within itself to bring forth and to manifest creation. It looked around and there was nothing to stand upon. And so it went within its heart, within its mind, and brought forth Ma'at, measure, O Ma'at, measure. Ma'at, truth, balance, reciprocity, and those universal principles upon which it would build this universe. So we see that the creator would use Ma'at to build when there was nothing there to build with. And so we as a people, when we look at ourselves today and we see that we have nothing that we have identified ourselves with to rest upon a foundation that we can build. Like when you go to court, if you have no standing, they throw you out of court. Well, we must have something to stand upon. And our ancestors left the concept, the universal concept of Ma'at, the truth. That is what we stand upon. And the truth is rooted in science, science of numbers. It's also rooted in chemistry, because that's what chemistry is alchemy. It is rooted in the chemistry of the elements. All right. So when we look at our ancestry and we look at the richness that they've left, we see that they've left a system of governance, a governance system that is governed by both masculine principles and feminine principles. And those principles are now tied with creation, with how creation or cosmogony, but how things come into being. And they're also tied to the first example of what a man should be and what a woman should be. And those two examples, as we know, are called Asar for the masculine and Aset for the feminine. Now, when we look at those two symbols, we see that Aset, which is the feminine principle, she also carries the symbols of the image of the throne. So she is the foundation upon which government and family must be built. When we look at the symbol for Asar, we see the throne with the eye being symbolic of creative energy, the eye being symbolic of supervision, and the eye being symbolic of the one that takes action and does. Now, when you're moving in this world, in your body temple, the eyes are on top of the body, always looking around to make sure you're secured, to make sure you walk in the right place, to see who your enemies are, to see who your friends and foes are. So the eyes played that very important role. So the eye on the throne is also telling you the man has a responsibility to secure and to protect. So upon this strong foundation that our ancestors have left, they left it in the form of what we call today Smai Tawi, the union of the two lands. That is the foundation that we found in our research that our ancestors built their high culture and civilization upon. And so we're not going to go and try now to make up things and come up with all these new ideas and all that and say that we invent this or we invent that when our ancestors have left a wheel already invented for us to progress and to move on with ourselves. So what we have done, not just we here at PerAnkh, but there are many other brothers and sisters, we have embraced what the ancestors have left and said it is our responsibility now to utilize this foundation and to rebuild our legacy. So that is what the PerAnkh is about. The PerAnkh that we are sharing in terms of our book is bringing all those components that we just discussed in an organized, progressive fashion, showing you how we can utilize this ancestral system today as the foundation for our culture and the foundation for our education, economic, and self-governance system, because it's all there. The ancestors left it. And so it's our responsibility, like others who've gone before us, Dr. Chekanta Diop, Dr. Ben, Dr. I always forget her name, but she wrote the ISIS papers.
Frances Cress Wilson.
Right. And I mean, the great work done by her. We have Dr. Marimba Ani. I have to mention also the woman, because it's not just the male, but we have to mention the woman. And we also have Jacinda Donji Houston, who wrote that powerful book, the ancient Ethiopian of the ancient Kushite race. And so we see we have to build upon that legacy. Those who've gone before us, Honorable Marcus Garvey, Hubert Harrison, right here from the Virgin Islands, Dr. Wilmot Blyden, and all the great ones who've gone before us. They too were searching there. They too refer us there. But we today now have that time. And we also have that intellectual training and ability to go back and fetch that, bring it into the present, and now build for our future. So that's the most important thing that I would say that this legacy is about. And the PerAnkh is the institution wherein in the past, as Dr. Ayekwarma has said in his work, and Osiris Rising, where he talks about the curriculum, okay? It is important for us now to not talk about it, but to implement it. So that now we can say we have a higher education system, an education system from the beginning, from the Head Start, if we want to use today's terminology, all the way to postgraduate. that we can now have a system that is one built upon our ancestry and says, this is the system that we're going to utilize to rebuild our nation, our kingdoms, our economic system, political systems, and all the things we need because the ancestors left it. We don't have to utilize their system because we see what their system have led to. Our ancestors left something there for us, and we now have the responsibility to utilize it.
I have a
So
question.
upon that is what I'll say we have to build this legacy.
I have a question. I have a question. I'm very excited by what I'm hearing, and I knew I would be. And here we have teachings and wisdom and ones who have gone before, who have left us with the information. And still we send our children to other places. And so then we have to do all of this work to, the term for rebuild is it Seruj?
Seruj. Yeah, SERDJ, Seruj.
Okay.
Yes.
So one of the things that I'm constantly involved in is relanguaging and recovering from a job very well done on many of us Africans, where we were systematically introduced to things alien to our very existence, our history, our presence, our potential. Things were separated. You know, that which should be integrated has been separated. There is no real effort to have us rise to our fullness and be as glorious as we are to be. So with this research that you have been involved in, and with this constant condition that we're in, where we send our children to places so they can be taught who they're not, how do we bring what you have into closer proximity with the condition we're in? Because the recovery is necessary. All of the aspects of ourselves are being given to us or taught to us or educated away from us by people who do not wish us well. So how do we gulf? How do we close the gulf? How do we bring the knowledge and the wisdom and the teachings so that our children don't ask the question, so what did you do as elders? I'm not interested because you didn't do anything for us. I want to be on social media. I want the big car. I don't want to acknowledge my elders. How do we bring it back together?
This is where I like to use my common sense as a builder and as a farmer. When we approach these things, we have to see that it's not an overnight effort. That's number one. Second, collectively, those of us who are more aware, we have to first admit to ourselves and humble ourselves. It's a path of humility. We have to recognize the fact that the damage has been done. We now have to know that in rebuilding something, it's not easy. And those of us who are aware that we have to do this, we have to start joining forces and have our plan. And some of these are inclusive in our writings. And when I say our writings, I'm not just talking about myself, but others who are also doing this. Because we must be humble enough to recognize that this is a collective effort. Asar and Ast is not just one being today. They're multiple beings, and they live and dwell within our hearts. They're the models that our ancestors have left, and their instructions, because it's not the first time that this has happened in our legacy, something that we need to know. When we do the research in our legacy, we saw that it happened before. And what happened is, the beauty about what happened before was that we collectively live basically the same place. So the rebuilding was a little more simple. But now we live in a time when, if we utilize that myth teachings, those stories that our ancestors have left, we see that Asar has been cut up in pieces and scattered all over the planet. We see that AfRaKa, as we call it today, Africa, has suffered the same thing intellectually and politically and economically. Africa has been cut up in pieces by the Eurasian people. And I say Eurasian because it's not just Europeans. It also includes some other Asiatic people. We may term them Arabs. We may term them other names. But the Eurasian people collectively have also cut Africa up. So Africa, like Dr. Chekanta Diop said, when they invaded North Africa and that northeastern part of Africa, which that Nile Valley area, because our demise didn't start with the Portuguese coming to West Africa. Our demise and our struggle has been a long one that is thousands of years. In North Africa, when they came in first around 1785 BCE. And when they saw the magnanimity of our civilization, the greatness, the opulence, they were shocked. They came first as traders. They came as people desiring to learn. Then they came as conquerors. And so that conquest has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. So we've been defending against that. But our problem is this. Once we were usurped and we took refuge into inner Africa, Congo, South Africa, East Africa, West Africa, because those people who live there now, their settlements and their kingdoms are not as old as ancient Kemet. Ancient Kemet is more than 10,000 years. So what has happened is that we have forgotten. So we have a responsibility to put together, to remember. That's where we have to go to those teachings. Because the teaching says after Asar is cut up, the colonialism, the splitting of families, the further continued cutting up in terms of the diaspora. All these things are the mutilation of our great civilization. Because when we say Asar, we're not talking about a man, we're talking about a people. We're talking about an entire kingdom of a people. We're talking about a realm of a people who were the initiators that would raise other people on the planet up to being true humans and the foundations of those principles of morality. So we're talking about a people who are destined and was destined from creation to take care of this planet. That's the responsibility we have. But in order for us to do that collectively, how do we start to do that? We first have to identify who we are. And we have to share this with all those countries in Africa, in the Caribbean, in the United States, in Canada, and wherever we are, because we have to identify who we are. Because if we don't know who we are, any identity that we assume makes us believe we are those things that we are not. And so we have to reclaim this legacy. That's where I'm going again. We have to reclaim this legacy and let all African people know this is the legacy that made us great. And because we have turned our backs on this legacy, we're suffering because we've moved away from Ma'at. We've moved away from Smai Tawi, which is our cultural unity. And since we've moved away from that, especially our men, and I'm saying this, and a lot of people might not like to hear this, we have to become the spiritual warriors that we once were. So that something that happened like George Foreman, or the brother
George Floyd,
that got murdered for all to see, executed, physical execution for all to see throughout the world. We have to know that we have to protect our communities, and our males have to start becoming the warriors to protect our communities. And we should have protected Africa. We made a mistake when those people came and we accepted them as fellow humans looking like ourselves. And we've seen what has happened. Today, we're still suffering from allowing them to come into our midst. We have to develop our immune system of spiritual warriors so that anyone trying to invade, anyone trying to come into our communities to exploit us, to take advantage of us, to steal our wealth and our resources, or to try and enslave us, or do whatever they're trying to do, we have to protect ourselves like our immune system. So that's where we have to start. We have to identify ourselves, like I'm going to use Israel. The Israeli people, those who claim themselves to be Israelites today, I have to correct some things, but those who claim themselves to be Israelites today, they utilize something called the Torah, the Bible, the Old Testament, as a foundation for their history. Whether their history is true or not, that Adam was created at 4004 BC, 9 a.m., they are using that book as a real historical reality to justify that God, the creator, gave them that land. And he gave that land to Abraham. Abraham was not indigenous to that land called Canaan. He was traveling from Ur of the Chaldees. But according to their teachings, God gave Abraham that land. Though people was there before Abraham. And through that teaching that developed into what we call Judaism, the Jewish culture, 12 tribes of Israel, their teachings that they have kept for hundreds and hundreds of years, they have their Sabbath, they have their holy days, etc. They were able to keep that culture and that teaching alive for all those years. I'm not judging whether they're true so-called Hebrew Israelites or not, because in our teachings, we know that the true Israelites actually is a teaching of the cosmos. It's actually the sun and the 12 signs of the zodiac. But they have taken this myth teachings as a foundation upon which they have built themselves into a nation. And after 1900 years of being dispersed from Israel, they utilize that mythical book as a historical reality, got assistance from European powers, and reclaimed the land people call today Palestine. Now, that's a precedent. I'm not saying that we're going to do exactly what they did, but one of my teachers, Dr. Yosef Ben Yakanan, told us If Israel could claim a strip of desert and reclaim it as their state and become a nation after 1900 years of being exiled from that land, there is no excuse why the Africans in the diaspora and the Africans at home cannot claim Africa, inclusive of Kemet and that northeastern region that is now occupied by Arabs, and many parts of North Africa, whether it's Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, and all those other areas. There's no excuse, because unlike Israel, we have our list of kings written on our temple walls and our tomb walls, that not mythical beings, but real kings and queens who lived in the flesh and blood and have been placed on those temple walls to show a record of families ruling that land for thousands of years. That is where we have to set our foundation as a united people, because it is there in what we call Nile Valley culture that we can see where we lived as a unified people, where we accomplish many of the great things that humans accomplish through developing themselves in terms of their internal evolution, where they develop the writing skills, the medical skills, the astronomical skills, the engineering skills, all these skills and craft that we developed for nation building and maintenance. It is there, the only place that we have in AfRaKa that we can say is the example and the model of our greatness. And it's there for us to reclaim. So that's where I go with that.
African Queen Mother Warrior, I am enjoying the teachings of our most powerful NswNebKaRa. And I would like you to tell me if I can continue to engage, because I know you kind of are keeping this, you know, we have a structure and there's a time and the time runs away. but the teachings are so important. NswNebKaRa, I am held spellbound by the wisdom and the Serouge that has to, that is critical. You mentioned a number of things. You mentioned that we have to have humility. You mentioned that we have to know, which are the teachings. We were left this by the ancients, that we must know thyself. I mean, that was such a simple, fundamental guidance. Know self. In knowing self, other things will become relevant, clearer, and you will align yourself to higher matters, higher teachings. You will harmonize. You will, all of those things that we know that happens when we return to self, when we return to those what might be called mystical teachings, when actually they're not a mystery to us. If we
They're not.
If that's right, if we're still enough, and we actually can set aside these things that we know are not right. There's something in us that says something ain't right. This ain't right, but we stay on it. If we're still enough to receive this information that has been it has been divinely ordained to us. It is our legacy. It is our inheritance. It is It is who we are. This is where African Queen Mother Warrior, I am seeking your guidance here, because I'm going in.
Go in.
I'm going in.
Go in.
Okay.
Go in.
So I witness a number of things. I have sat at the feet of these great teachers, and so I have come from a place of being raised in, you know, the Anglican, whatever. I was raised in that, in the belly of the beast. And I was a good student. And I have gone to what they would call an institution of higher education. This is what they would call it. For me, it is not that. It is out here claiming to be something that it's not. And so to get us to a place where we are receiving those teachings that are part of where we come from and who we are. On my journey, what I experience is that people find it difficult to move from where they are. They're looking at sacred text. They're calling it the Bible. They're calling it the Quran. They're looking at sacred text, and they're holding onto that sacred text for dear life, even if it is leading to our demise or us not holding the position that we should. So when we greet each other, we are disrespectful to each other because we are not holding each other in high enough esteem as we should be. We are not demonstrating a way of being. I have a question about going from here to here, and wonder if you could share with the listeners, perhaps, were you always here? How do you get from here to here? Because that's where I have some of my biggest challenges, to get people to know that this is not a theory. This is our being. We must be these divine ones. We must walk, talk, live, vibrate in this way. But if they can't, the sacred text that they are looking at is making them call, well, I don't know about you, but they're making that people are calling me names. They think I'm strange, which I like. I like the idea of being strange, because familiar is not being good for our health. So could you share, for those who may be listening and saying, I'm hearing something, but how do I get from where I am to over there? Because ego is serious. So humility is like, what do you even mean? Then you speak about balance. You mean the male and the female energy, like balance. You mean like in harmony? Like, no, that can't work. Men have to bully women. Men have to disrespect women. Women are not to be heard. You don't have anything useful to bring. We are, you came from our rib, like all this stuff that is just abuse, really. So how I want to know, for the listeners and for myself, how can we recover? How did you do it? How did this happen?
Sure, that's the question. How did you do it? Because that's the best way to answer the question. Okay. Yes, like you, like yourself and many others.
African Queen Mother Warrior, excuse me, Brother King, but African Queen Mother Warrior is there. Her mic's up, but she's falling about there.
She knows the story. Because you see, I wasn't always like this. I had my journey, and one of the things that I would first say before I start that is that we have to get out of our minds that those people who are pretenders to be the authority are really not the authority. They're pretenders, because at this time in their evolution, they're not qualified to really be the authority to guide us to true spirituality. That's something we have to get in our minds. And the reason I say that is when we look around of the reality that we're living in the present time, because we have to deal with what is right now, we see that those people who are claiming to be in the authority, where they are guiding the entire human families at this particular point in time. And it's totally opposite to what our ancestors did and accomplished as far as human evolution is concerned. That's first and foremost. So they represent that Isfetian, like my beloved queen was saying earlier. Isfet is the opposite to Ma'at. They rule by violence. They rule by fear. They rule by materialistic control, and they rule by invasion, pillage, and plunder. Even if they put it into what we call an aspect of law or an aspect of religion or education system. And so it goes back to what my beloved teacher, who's still alive and amongst us, Dr. Teofilo Benga, says. We have to have a philosophy of education. And my philosophy of education started in my culture with my parents and my grandparents. That's where it started.
Thanks.
Because after school, first of all, I hated school. I hated school. I don't know why I hated school. I just hated school. But I was intelligent. My mother was a teacher. She became a principal and all those things and moved up in the ranks of education administration and those things. So for me, I would say my process started in the womb of my mom, because while she was pregnant, I was going with her to teach. And when I was 3 years old, I was reading and writing already. So my journey started there. And when we were growing up, we were exposed to nature. Nature is the natural university. Remember, you go to the university.
All right now.
There we go. Okay. So we have to understand, because a lot of the things that where we are is because we are going by a people who claim that they have the authority to be the ones to guide us to be the maximum that we can be, but in actuality, they're training us so that they could continue to pillage and plunder our resources, which is our labor. So for growing up in our times, we were exposed to nature. We did what our ancestors did. We had to work with the animals. We did agriculture. I was exposed to agriculture. We went pragging for fruits and all those things. We went fishing. We went hunting. You know, those are the things that keep you in tune with nature. I had the privilege of coming home and going to my grandmother and my grandfather. And they were our teachers because our parents are busy. So when we come home and after school, go up to Granny Becker or go up to Granny Becker. And she was a mistress cook and farmer. She had goats, she had chickens, she had, food growing, and she prepared meals. And so the discipline starts there. The discipline of the responsibility when you get home to take care of animals, to take care of plants, the responsibility of helping to provide for the family. All these is a part of the culture. Then the respect. Who you talking to, young man?
All right.
I, your grandmother, watch your mouth, or else you're going to see blood and them teeth.
I know that conversation.
Okay,
I'm
then.
beginning to have it.
All right, so that's where it started, I would say. And, for me, after a while, I went through the juvenile thing because a lot of people don't realize when we reach, especially the males, I'm speaking from the male perspective now. Rites of passage, exactly. I had a rites of passage, yes. In the church, they call it confirmation. But it wasn't a rite of passage, it was an indoctrination. Okay, so that I could conform and say, no, I accept Christ because I'm at a particular age and I'm gonna take my first communion and I'll be a believer. So I went through all that. But after we went through all that, our parents didn't force us to church anymore. So we were free. And so church got thrown out the door. And so I went through my puberty and my rebellion. We butt heads with my father, not my mother, but my father. And because that's the time we were supposed to be initiated, that rites of passage to manhood. But the guidance weren't there. I mean, we had the grandfather, yes, again, but we still have to remember that even though they share in the culture, they too are indoctrinated.
Yes.
Okay. And it wasn't until I was 18, 19 years, spirit. I was living on the island of St. Thomas, finishing high school. And because I hated school, I'd stopped school for 2 years. And I was living out in the country, the southeastern part of St. Thomas, called Mariah Nose Hole. And every morning I went on a rock. There's this big rock. I would sit on that rock every morning, religiously and spiritually, before the sunrise. I sat on that rock every morning, religiously. Nobody taught me this. And I would just go there and sit and watch the sunrise. I didn't say anything. I just watched it rise. I didn't know I was practicing what is called today solar gazing. It's now a practitioner, something that people practice all over the world, where you're getting energy from the sun every morning. Every morning, I'm still doing it. I get up in the morning, I still go and watch the sunrise. And when I start to watch the sunrise, I started to notice habit starts to disappear. I used to smoke cigarettes. That got thrown out the door. I smoked ganja. That got thrown out the door. I used to eat meat. That got thrown out the door. I used to eat, certain things. The body just starts saying, I don't need this, I don't need that, okay? And then I started to see myself being guided into spiritual practices. I learned from amongst the people from India, the practice of yoga, amongst the Sufis, the mystic teachings of the Sufis. I learned from the Rastafarians how to eat ital and prepare it in the yaba pot and scraping the coconut with the aisu and all that and making ital. I learned from the Hebrew Israelites. I learned Hebrew, studied Hebrew. I studied Arabic with the Nation of Islam. So I started my journey there. I went beyond the church. You could say, like what Christopher Columbus used to be telling the Europeans, hey, the earth ain't flat. There's something beyond what appears to be the edge of the earth. And I started that journey. And in that journey, I found out why I hated school. I found out that I wanted to learn about myself. And in that journey, I started to ask the question, okay, I'm studying about India. I'm studying about Arabia. I'm studying about Canaan and Israel. What about Africa?
Right, that's right.
What did we contribute? And so my journey now, exactly, my journey now would now go to people like Chekanta Diop and Joseph Ben Yakanan, Dr. John Henry Clark, and others. And then I began to realize, hey, I am the one I've been searching for.
Hello. We are
self-knowledge. Yeah. And so that's where it starts. And then you dig deeper. I was swimming on the surface, then I says, hey, I got my diving mask. Let me go diving now. So I go down deep now, and that's where it started. And then I asked myself this question. Well, if our ancestors were so great, how did they become so great? And I began to search, what kind of education system did they have? Okay, because I understood that people came to Africa
To teach.
Right, to learn. And I said, well, if we were the teachers, how did we learn?
Right.
And then it dawned on me. When I was in the university, I was 20 years. I was sophomore. I was studying African civilizations, etc. At the same time, yoga and all these things. And I was asked by the professors on Black History Week in February to give a lecture on Black history. And after I gave the lecture on Black history, I told the professors at the College of the Virgin Islands, where now is University of the Virgin Islands, where my beloved Queen works now. I told the professors there, Black History, 1975. I'm walking out of this university or this college, and I'm going to the real university. I'm going to the universe and to nature to be my teacher, because what I desire to learn, you don't offer here.
That's right.
So that's where my real renunciation of what we call Western education starts. And I went and lived in the rainforest areas of St. Croix.
Wow.
And the great book of nature and the universe became my teacher.
Wow.
Along with the practice of yoga and martial arts and agriculture. And so I started to live like the ancestors live on the land.
Wow.
Notice the seasons, study the stars, learn the rituals, learn how all these are connected to the human anatomy and physiology. All these things I did. And from that, I then began to do my search with Dr. Ben and others who were sharing with me at the time. What was the education system of our ancestors? And that time the internet and all that was coming out. We're now in the 80s. And I started, my research through books, etc. Then I came across a book called the PerAnkh, The House of Life. And that book was focused on the education of the healers of ancient Egypt, how they educated their doctors. And so my quest would then go there. As somebody who was interested in engineering, architecture, etc., I said, well, I want to put my emphasis on how they built the pyramid, how they built the temples, how they built all these great, powerful structures and edifices that has lasted thousands and thousands of years, especially what we call today the Great Pyramids. And so that's where I would be guided by our ancestors into the mysteries or the myth stories, not myth stories, but the myth stories of our ancestors that contain within them the arts and sciences of the universe.
And with that,
blessed love,
I am very grateful for the eloquent and very articulate description, versation, reasonment of that journey linked to building legacies. I'd like to just share, extend some regards for what's in the chat, because persons are posting commentary in the chat and wonderful thumbs up and hearts in the chat. And again, we encourage persons to do that. So greetings to Eldris Sandra Gerard for joining with us. Also, Sister Queen Levon Wise with her greetings of good afternoon. Earlier, we had a greeting from Moot. And Moot, I'm a NebKaRa, Hedu Nefer, Abu Jusef, Holy Elder, and NebKaRa, and that was from the Suit Moot, I'm a cool. As well as there was a sharing from Sister Queen Dr. Remy Aleppo, saying just the energy of Dua Mut Senet, Dr. ChenziRa, great to see you all, which is really exciting because she does a lot of work, right there with CUNY, in Brooklyn. We've had the joy and privilege of giving lectures around African civilization with her students. And so we're very grateful to know that she had time. We also have commentary from Ras Tafari Tazadi, and it shares honorable sound, truths and rights. Victory is at hand, wise mind, knowledge and overstanding with faith, courage and a just cause. The children of righteousness will slew Goliath, the invaders of Africa and the destroyers of humanity. Well said, I loved NebKaRa. Honorable words. And again, that's from Ras Tafari Tazadi.
Oh, my beloved younger brother. Yes, always there.
Always there. As well as we got greetings from Sister Queen Deborah right here in I St. Croix. And I always say via Trinidad and Tobago, via little bit in Nueva York, right? And she sends her blessings to all. Ras Bongo Joe. And it's powerful because, again, this is bringing brothers and sisters from within the Caribbean, within the 48 contiguous couple of persons are reaching out from the continent and just sharing like thumbs up, hearts, etc., because they are listening as far as South Africa. So we definitely give a shout out to Brother Menelik Gondara, the artist. And Brother Bongo Joe says, you hated school because you have excellent vision and can see through the PH. Fuckery. I said that's gonna be my new
that is right.
That's gonna be my new.
The Falcon came out.
Definitely. And then we have, okay, let me keep going because we got more. And we even have Nana. Oh, Nana's listening all the way from Rwanda. Okay. Wait a second. Get excited. And we have a lot of eldresses and elders that are tuning in. Almost missed this. Interesting and necessary. Mama One Africa, and that's from Imakus and Zinka Okofu Ababio. And it's important. One Africa is an entire community vibration in the Cape Coast area in Ghana, and currently the Divine Queen Mother, Queen Grandmother more accurately, Nana Imakus, she is in Rwanda sharing those reflections. We've got a reflection from Brother Lyndon Wilberg. Much thanks for this liberating forum, message, and peace, right? It's just wonderful to have that. Our very own Anubi Chionesu has said, blessed parenting. That's our son. He's just blessed parenting.
I'm Pooh.
Right. Pooh knows that he had to hear this all of his life, and he's like in mid 30s now. So it's really wonderful to just to give that vibration.
Master craftsman.
Exactly, and a master drummer. So we're very grateful. You had said something earlier that brought up another meme, and it reads as follows. It says, "The secret war of Black people," and I quote, "We do not see the war being waged against us because we don't want to and because we are afraid. We are engaging in behavior designed to block out any awareness of the war, our true reality." And those are the words of her illustriousness, honorable ancestress, Queen Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. And that's, to just kind of give that navigation tool. There's one piece that I need to put up before we go into the final session of today's gathering. I feel that, and I'm saying it to those that are listening, those that are within earshot, that are tuning in with us live. If you have commentary, just go to the page. It's posted on ChenziRa Kahina page. It's posted on Sandra Richards page. It's posted on SNDr page, and it's going through other networks. But if you have questions, if you have commentaries, if you have uplifting sharings, or even solutions, resolutions, recommendations for how we build legacy in concert with what, more correctly, in alignment, in laser-like focus with what you're hearing today, please place that inside of the chat, because that is part of why we do these types of reasons, to really get a global, engaging conversation around these particular pieces. There was one piece that I felt would be really wonderful for us to share today, because we had the honor and privilege of being joined in our previous broadcast by one of our elders in the community, the wider community. And this is from Brother Dr. Kevin Washington, Nana Mawata quite recently. So let's just hopefully, let me make
That was
sure.
powerful.
Yeah, let me make sure that I do what I did, because last time when I did this sharing, I was like, oh, that's right, add sound. I was like, can you hear it? Can you hear it? Like, okay, we're gonna make it work. It comes a little bit. Sometimes we keep telling people one day it will shall.
Hey, I am Kevin Washington here in the Gambia, and we're at Hotel Tamala, getting things ready for Homecoming Gambia. We want to make sure that you have a nice day here, so understand that we're in the motherland. You can see behind me, you can see the ocean, you can feel and experience this particular ambiance, and understand that this is a place that you can call home. Homecoming Gambia is about coming together all over the African diaspora to converge in one space, to reconnect with African ancestry, but more importantly, to begin to look at how we can begin to reinvest in this space, to begin to create business, to begin to come into contact with those who desire our expertise. So we're looking for medical doctors to come. We're looking for those who have expertise in business, agribusiness, those who want to simply invest in some particular avenues, such as, of course, the medical profession, but also I'm a psychologist, so we have mental health behavior practices going on here. So the point is that Homecoming Gambia is about coming back to a space where you can feel that you belong, feel connected, but also it is a roots festival where we come back and we tie into our roots. We know that here from the Gambia, many Africans were taken. They were taken by virtue of Africa and African human trafficking experience. They were taken by boat. We know that the English wanted to maintain the waterway to lead out of the inner regions of Africa to the ocean to be able to export humans. So what we are doing here is that we're also connecting with Kutakente village, Jufere. We're connecting with that space as well to reorganize ourselves, to reaffirm who we are. And also, it is in this space that we affirm our humanity, because it was here that people tried to take our humanity away from us, but it's also here that we can affirm our own humanity. So come to Homecoming Gambia 2021, Hotel Tamala Hotel. It is a lovely place that you can see. It's a space that you ought to be able to come and to feel that you are at home, but also that you're connected to people that look like you. As a matter of fact, if you follow me here, I'll show you what the kitchen looks like, and you'll see who's cooking the food for you in this space. So they look like you and I. This is where good food is prepared. This is where good service takes place. Come, Homecoming Gambia 2021. We're here getting ready for you. Thank you.
I felt it was important for us to just know that he was just here with us a couple of weeks ago. He made it very clear that it was going to be happening, with Homecoming Gambia, moving on investments, educational activities, jurisprudence. You heard the agriculture, agribusiness, obviously culinary arts. There's educational opportunities, real estate development, construction, all types of opportunities to really help to build legacy wherever we go. That's what our ancestors taught us, to build legacy. They left markers all around the earth, and they left markers that we're still learning how to transcribe, transliterate, understand how they were structured, how they were built, etc. And this is a great opportunity for us. That's just one of many. The other part that I desired, and I had my list, I made sure that
Before you move on, African
yes.
Queen Mother Warrior, I don't think I heard him share the dates. I believe the dates are May
26th.
to
May
May
12th to the
22nd.
22nd. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, so I was listening for that, but I don't think that he get it. But if people do a search, they can find it's very, very well promoted online. So just so people know, it's May 12th to 22nd.
Right. And for those persons that, what I've observed is that some of the fairs between Brussels, they have like direct flights to Banjul. So that's something that persons that are already on the other side of the Atlantic can have the benefit of. Those of us that are coming out of the Caribbean and then have to go to the North America and then have to go to Europe, and right, it's a little bit different. However, and there seems to be a large number of brothers and sisters, again, with all the various global protocols that are in place that are making sure that things are safe. What I appreciate, I like clean kitchens. I just need to say that. And that was really rewarding to just see from a very informal tour, clean kitchens, clean engagements. And again, for persons that are going to the continent, to see that the affluence that persons think only exists in rural areas and urban areas in the West or in the North, that's not true. Africa is quite developed. And if we remember that all development around the globe is grounded in African development, all 12 million square miles of it, including the resources, the most important resource to people. Really important to just highlight that. And as NebKaRa was speaking about his journey and making that reference to all of the different circles and trainings and edification, more importantly, in education, even greatly, PerAnkh Smai Tawi comes through within that in terms of the House of Life of the Sacred Twin Regions, right? And is not just a incorporated organization, it has societal civilization building connected in terms of its very root. It's not just a movement, it's a society, it's a civilization, it's a nation. And there is a decree that started as a declaration and has expanded into a decree from as early as 1998 that was brought to international circles. So that's why some persons, when we speak of sovereignty, we're speaking of sovereignty not in a theoretical framing. We're speaking of sovereignty of land, culture, spirituality, socioeconomic engagement, all the building blocks of a nation, of a society, of a civilization. There's also the shrine of Muti Ast. There are the African Queen Mother warriors. There are the Smai Tawi Ankh Ascension Renaissance, the Center for the Restoration of Ma'at. There are multiplicity of shrines and kepras around the globe that are sustaining this particular type of journey work. We have Black Gold Press International, which is led by Dr. Chihutimes Mfundishi Hassan El Salim, who is an initiate of the high and a grand master of many systems and is currently expanding his work in Ghana as we speak, building independent universities, independent institutions of learning, and establishing those martial arts and science spaces in different parts of the globe. The Shrine of Ptah, through the work and leadership and the elder leadership in particular of Baba Heru Ankra Samad Sepata. And again, we keep bringing this up. When you heard Karas talk about martial arts and sciences, he was actually given the instruction and the key and the guidance from Grandmaster Dr. Ron Van Cleef, the original Black Dragon, to it's out of the Chinese Goju International Federation to establish his own system. And that system that was established is a very African rooted system. Uat Neferahai Uite. So the persons know that this is not like we just kind of push this together. There are different organizational entities. There are authentic African kingdoms and queendoms and chiefdoms that exist that actually push the same building legacy discourse together very clearly. There's organizations that work through networks with either the United Nations, UNESCO, and other international bodies, like African Views, led through Dr. Wale Idris Abijade. And it's important for persons to get some of this. And it's going to come fast. Go back and listen to the recording. But we're just making sure that we're not keeping it limited. Inside of our different networks, when you're putting things in the chat, add those other organizational entities that are contributing to building legacy so that we can expand that and let persons know too, because not one organization may work for everybody. So there's other organizational entities. There's Revolutionary African Women, All African People's Revolutionary Party, Sixth Region Diaspora Union, World African Diaspora Union, Universal Negro Improvement Association, African Community League Rehabilitating Committee 2020. Yes, she remembers these things. UNIA ACL RC 2020, very different engagement to bring all of our African brothers and sisters, irrespective of the other organizational entities you're engaged in, to just be on the same accord of our upliftment. The All African Women's Revolutionary Union, which is the women's wing of the AAPRP that just celebrated its 40th anniversary in 2020. How many of us even remembered? Right, there we go. The Emancipation Support Committee of Trinidad and Tobago, which is very involved in providing that foundational vibe of how we have conversations on reparation, restitution, repatriation, culture and heritage and education and so forth, and also providing the secretariat support for the Caribbean Pan-African Network, which is expanding and expanding beyond some of its original very closed engagements. It's very wide in terms of having representation within the Caribbean, Central America, South America, the African Union, for those persons that might forget that there still is an African Union, even if they act very quiet right now. There's a lot going on inside the African Union with resources to establish another layer of building legacy and keeping in mind that the African Union, which had its groundings in the Organization of African Unity, was preceded by the Pan African Women's Organization. Really important for persons to know that it was women that gathered, that organized in the late 40s, early 50s to establish an organization to bring Pan African women together that still exists, and that it was the foundational framing and network upon which then the men pro-established, kind of like us, seat, throne, foundation for Asar. I'm just saying so we get the same rhythm of building legacy. The Ifa tradition and all of the different shrines that are linked to the Ifa tradition. So persons recognize that there is a ancestral tradition that comes from other places. Some people think that when we say Kemet, we're limiting it to just quote unquote United Arab Republic, Egypt space. No, we're speaking of an African, ancestral, ancient, Nubian, Cushianu, Kemetu heritage legacy. I'm going to say it one more time. Ancient, ancestral, African, Nubian, Cushianu, Kemetu heritage legacy. For short, Ankh legacy. See that? Because we're talking about our heritage, and we shifted from Heri to Heru. So it's Herutage. We're talking about what works with us, how we move our wings and flex, how we're able to deal with that upliftment. And that's why we speak of building legacy. Whether it's to SntDr, if you want to go in a more Christian realm, there's a significant amount happening, whether it's the African Methodist, Episcopalian, other Black Baptist types engagement and ministerial work that's authentically us, not the Europeanized version. We want to be very clear on that, because even in that, it becomes a conflict for many of the leaders in those particular orders. Whether it's God's House International, which as we speak, while we're having this reason, they're having their activities in terms of uplifting and providing medical support, in addition to spiritual and support and upliftment in Sierra Leone, in Freetown, in Marge. Just, and I put that out there, sending energy to Queen Grandmother, Reverend Dr. Yvonne Washington Ture, as we speak. Whether it's the National Coalition for Blacks, for reparations in America, and COBRA, that people still forget has been in existence for many, many decades. Whether it's the National African American Reparations Commission, whether it's the CARICOM Reparations Commission, whether it's all of these other Pan-African Diaspora Union, all these other organizations and entities and linkages, these natural, indigenous, ancestral African civilization groups, these Oceania groups that are bringing together people that are on islands and surrounded by water. Think about that. How many people live on islands around the globe and have more of an affinity to nature and life and science and technology? So all of that is why I was pretty quiet, because I needed to make sure that we had some of that list. And I know there's other organizations and support systems and examples of building legacy that expand even beyond what I've listed. And that's what we're hoping to be able to gather when we do these reasonings. So that the more that we do this, the more that we're bringing all of that.
Thanks. You know, I listen very carefully to the wisdom being shared by NswNebKaRa, and I listen very carefully to what you are sharing as well. African Queen Mother Warrior, Sr.Dr. ChenziRa, and my particular journey took me away from the shores of the UK, which is surrounded by something that looks a bit like water, but actually it's so polluted, I don't even want to refer to it. And took me to places like the Americas, where I was able to sit and listen to the wisdom coming out of those ones unearthed and guided through the civil rights system. And many of them have traveled to the UK, and I've sat at the feet of Queen mothers like Marimba Annie and various people. And I remember that journey kept saying to me, there's something happening in the Americas. I've got to go to the Americas. I've got to be among ones who are having this ankhversation, who are vibrating on a certain level. And in that journey, I remember thinking, what about the Africans in Europe? Like, there's a whole set of Africans outside of, the Americas, and we will become much more of a force if we recognize each other. Like if we see each other, so that we're not defined by the geographical landmass, but we're defined by our origins, where we have come through. And that's one of the reasons why I was so thrilled to be part of this Building Legacy program that we're doing, because there are movements and there are philosophies and there are happenings from Africans resisting in different ways and forming organizations or places where we can go to. So my message really is to those who are listening and those who will listen, is that for those of us as Africans, wherever we are, whether we're in Europe and we've been part of the Al-Kabalan revivalist movement, or the Nation of Islam, or the African Hebrew Israelites, or the Stop the Mangamizi, all of these various movements which are coming out of Europe, and there's a place for us to go. This is what I really want us to recognize. Those of us who are beginning to say, I need to go somewhere else. This place is just too toxic. What they're teaching us is not right. They're murdering our children. We can't go into their hospitals and know that we will come out alive because we bleed to death. And all these things are happening. There are now places for African people to go. So if people listen to this broadcast again, they will get the list that you have given my dearest beloved African Queen Mother Warrior. They will get the list. Go to these places, touch these places. They won't all be, everyone won't suit you, because there's work to be done in different ways, and we're at different stages of our recovery. But there are places for us to go. If you can make it to the homecoming, that's a place you can go. If you can find a way to connect with PerAnkh University, the teachings are there. There's a place that we can go to find out, is this a possible place where I can find out if what I've been hearing and I don't feel is right is actually wrong? Is there an alternative frame of reference that I can associate myself with? Other people who know that I'm coming from somewhere and won't scorn me or ridicule me, or they won't chastise me. They'll just receive me as I am whilst I'm in recovery. There are places for us to go now. And I urge those of us who are really looking to save ourselves and to recover and to know self, to return to self, to reach out to these organizations. As I say again, the first one you touch may not be the one that you need to be in. So touch another one. Touch another one. You will find another place to go. What we have been sold in the schools is a lie. I want you to know it's a lie. When you call Babylon and they come in their various versions of blue with their gun and their taser and their kosh, and they are coming to kill you, there are other places to go. Do not just rely on the propaganda that we have been sold. There are other places where we will heal and we will recover and we will join and we will have the balance and we will elevate and we will Serouge. Am I saying it right? Serouge. Okay, I'm trying. All this new language, all these new words, we must reclaim them. We must reclaim our language, our culture. We must feel comfortable doing something other than what we've become used to, because what we've become used to has us vulnerable. There are places for us to go, not just physically, psychologically, intellectually, spiritually. Let us go home. Let us come home. That's how we build legacy. And our children, bring our children and our grandchildren, and let us meet the high priestesses and the high priests and know that they are more than worthy and knowledgeable. We don't have to go in the Vatican thing and see them people that interfere with the children. Don't go there. Come home. Come home. Replay this. There's a list. And now the borders are being reduced. So don't worry. Don't worry if you show up in a UNIA. African people are waiting for African people to come home. Come home.
I also want to share that Grandmaster Ron Van Cleef was listening. So he sends his love to us. And I'm very grateful for that. And definitely us. And we're also, the highlight, another comment that's in the chat is that healing is a key aspect of building legacy. And that is from Sister Queen Deborah, which I definitely concur in that regard. And as you were mentioning, the Al-Kabalon revivalist movement, the Stop the Ma'angamisi, also the Patah Council, Sister Space UK, the Central American Black organizations, they're known as CABO, which is a collection of Black organizations throughout Central America. There's brothers like Elder Sidney, who is able to provide a lot of information in that regard and is always in that connection, so that while we're speaking in English now, there are other networks that are speaking in a multiplicity of languages, whether it's, African languages, Swahili, whether it's Bambara, Basa, Cree, as well as in the Americas, Portuguese, Spanish, Creole, Patois, Papiamento, in addition to French and English. Just so persons know that there are other networks to get some of this information.
Global African Congress.
Right, Global African Congress as well. Right, we've got, there's African Liberation Day coming forward in May, as on the 25th all the time. And while certain organizations have shifted it from African Liberation Day to Africa Freedom Day, which is good. However, it's really important that we remember that liberation, unification, social governance piece is really important, as Nkrumah, the Honorable Dr. Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, first president of an independent Ghana, reminded us that Pan-Africanism and his conscientism and the words power that came from him is the total liberation and unification of Africa under a scientifically socialist government. And we know that was 20th century. And as you move it into the 21st century, with all of this new tech and so forth, that term scientific and even socialism takes on another personification and how we implement that. Because we know we're going to be adding, it's essential that we add healing. It's essential that we speak to spirit as a grounding for all of these versations. Here in the Virgin Islands, we had started the Virgin Islands Natural Educators and Homeschooling Association based on all of our different talents and expertise around becoming and restoring natural education, and not dealing with training, and not dealing with how we had to continuously undo what the existing systems do, which is to miseducate and to strip or dumb down our children, which in fact become adults, become the elders, etc. And in doing that, we aligned ourselves with international organizations like the Institute for Black Education and others around the globe that are doing and establishing these institutes, universities, and spaces of learning for our children and their parents and the elders that are in their communities. As we educate one, we teach one, each one teaches one while each one heals one. And that was part of that particular work. And as I said, there's many other organizations that we have not listed here. And it's important that persons start to share with us the names of those organizations. You know, we have groups in St. Martin, for example, like Conscious Lyrics, and persons think that when they hear Conscious Lyrics, it's just music. They are really pushing word, sound, power, strength on every radio network, SOS in St. Martin, on the French side. Engage.
Our cultural warriors are critical.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, and that's a, you know, there, and the names of them, you know, it would start to get into a very long list of who we begin to share. And we're looking forth to having some of those persons come and offer us that word, sound, power, and strength on how we build legacy in the now time, and how do we bring that forward. There's activities happening in Uganda with brothers and sisters that traverse through our region, share what's going on, express to us various investment opportunities. Of course, we're hearing a lot about Ghana, we're hearing a lot in the Cameroons, Nigeria, Togo, Benin. Certain work is happening in the Congo. There's been some resistance, so persons are being a little bit cautious. However, long term, because of its mass, there's a lot that's happening all through the different parts of the Congo. Of course, inside of Kemet, contemporary Egypt, as they so call it, there's been a resurgence of interest and study in that area. So a number of persons are going there, establishing institutions, finally having sites at the different temples to do certain research. You know, we can speak to persons like Professor Tony Browder and others that are doing different work and traversing in that space to bring content, bring examples of how we build legacy and how we restore, reclaim, resurrect our ancestral legacy in contemporary times, and bringing all of that together. There's a number of opportunities that are available, you know, to each and every one of us. Activities, as I mentioned earlier, in Rwanda, things that were shared by Brother Haru Ofori Ata in various settings. You know, let's look up herbalresults.net and you'll see herbal results, herbalresults.net, and you'll see how persons are creating business, doing the healing at the same time that they're doing development, solar energy, construction work, etc. There's a lot that's happening in that regard. And to just complement what NswNebKaRa shared with us, because he's only given us, like, I wouldn't even say 10% of the vastness of the work and the engagement that he has really brought forward in that regard. So we're looking forward to hosting him again in the near future.
Oh, yes, please. That can be it. That can be a list. Majestic, most gracious NswNebKaRa. I really just feel so very blessed by your presence, your wisdom, the expansion of what you bring, that you have done this journey. You have walked a walk so that you can talk this talk. And not everybody that comes before us has walked any walk, they're just talking. Like, And we have to be so careful. We do, because people will just appear and say, well, you know, I went to university and I got my PhD that I studied, you know, full time for X amount of thing. And so I did the theory. And so now I am the font of all knowledge. No, you are not. You're not. You are the holder of a doctoral degree, and I know what I'm talking about. So we need ones like yourself, Grandmaster. We really need ones like yourself who have taken the baton from our wise ones and are carrying on the work and are building the legacy. We need to hear from wise ones who are powerful kings, pharaohs, majestic ones, divine ones, all of those descriptions. We need to hear that, because our young sons and our young daughters are watching, and they need to see themselves. You know, I said before, we're looking for ourselves in all of this crazy stuff. You know, who are the ones with the knowledge, and what are we going to do? How do we get out of this craziness? We don't have much time. I will say again, if I'm given the opportunity, how grateful I am. But right now, I'm going to say how grateful I am, because I know that we do have to pay attention to time. But I want to say how grateful I am that you found the time to share. There will be ones who have listened to you, and as a result of the things you have said, will seek further knowledge. They will seek further knowledge because they know there's an alternative to that which they know now.
With that, NebKaRa, please share with us in these reflective moments, and even if we have to go a little bit over, we can, that sharing that you would like to leave with our listeners and our viewers on building legacy.
Yes, first of all, thanks for the honor and privilege to be here and to share. I love to share. I think at my present maturity, I've become more like a fruit tree. So it's time to share the fruits. I always remember the fruits have the seeds. So it's now time to be sharing those fruits. One of the things I want to say is that we must remember that a lot of what those who are in control have been using, its foundation is ours. So even though we've gone through their systems of education, it was never exposed to us actually that it is still ours. It's just more a materialistic aspect of it. And what we need to do now is to adjust it and align it properly so that some of the people who already have some of the training can utilize it more wisely by shifting and aligning it more in harmony with what we call ma'at. And that's the next thing I'd like to talk about on the next time. You know, how the modern education system originates from our ancient ancestral system of the PerAnkh. That's also the second volume of our PerAnkh work. Anyhow, what I like to say is this. Smai Tawi is not something that we have made up. Smai Tawi is something written on the thrones, on the temple walls, and many of the artifacts of our ancestors to remind us that at one time in our evolutionary development for a very long period of time, we established those religious and spiritual principles that still govern the universe as a foundation to establish our unification as a people. And during that unification as a people, amongst us, we were able to utilize time to journey in our inward evolution, wherein we developed our consciousness to such a high state that we develop the kind of civilization that today is considered the highest civilization or high culture and the healthiest people that ever lived on this planet. We must also be aware that the people who invaded and usurped our culture and our high system of living have gone to extensive length to try to obliterate and to destroy the memory of our ancestry. And they've done so with what we call in present time man-made religious systems. And I'm going to finish with this. What do I mean by man-made religious systems? Our writing system is not a man-made system. It is a system based on the images and the symbols that we find in nature. Our realm of governing ourselves is not a man-made thing. It comes from how the solar system is structured. It includes the sun as a sovereign of our solar system, the moon as the vice sovereign of our solar system, which we equate with the king, the queen, the Nesu, and the Nesu. So that our system is based on universal principles. The people who would be serving, such as the vizier, the wise ones, etc., they would be the planetary forces, etc. So that we see that our system is not built upon a man-made system. It's built upon the creative universal laws of nature. And the laws of nature are the laws of our creator. So those are things that's very important to know, because today, these man-made religions, as we call them, sort of like keep us away from nature. They try to make us believe that a lot of the teachings came from some mystical, inspirational thing from some unknown so-called creator. And only they are the authority. And those people who receive those inspiration are the authority to now determine what is spiritual or religious. In our ancestry, we went to the great book of nature. I'll repeat that. We went to the great book of nature, written in our hearts and our minds, to trod the way that we call Ma'at. As the saying goes, great is Ma'at, Chehuti, Seshait, Pita. Theirs are everlasting. They've been unchanged since Sep Tepi, the first time, from the Noon's creation. When you establish a system of knowledge based on the laws of nature and the laws of the universe, you're aligning yourself with the natural order, which we call Ma'at, of creation. And that is the strongest foundation to build upon. It is a foundation built upon the rock of Ma'at and not the sands of ignorance of those who utilize their decrypted minds, their undeveloped minds, to misguide humanity. And to misguide humanity by hiding the truth of who the true people, the completed people, because the word Kemet doesn't just mean black. Kem also means complete. The people who are completed, the people who are whole, and that's who we are. And today we also call the melanated people. I'll share this quick with you, melanated. You know, when you're cooking, you have vegetables, you get your seasoning and stuff and your salt and your pepper and all that. It's something called marinated. Melanated and marinated is the same. We season, okay? We flavorful. That's how we are as a people. That's why we have the colors we have. So we are marinated people, well seasoned, well complete. And we are the children of the light of Ra. Mesu and Ra, which is where the word masonry comes from. And the Mesu and Ra system is the PerAnkh education system. So we are the children of light, the completed children of Ra. That's who we are. And we have a responsibility and a duty to take care of this planet. As the marinated people, the people who are well seasoned, well completed, we now have the duty and responsibility to reclaim our rightful place and legacy in and on this planet, and to guide our humanity and other humans to be in alignment with the teachings of Ma'at. So we have to go within ourselves and find that kunum in ourselves, and that kepra, and that imhotep, and all those creative energies in ourselves to manifest, to bring forth new systems of our own, based on our creativity, not necessarily of those who usurp, those who don't build in harmony with Ma'at, to bring about systems of construction that is in harmony with Ma'at, and also systems of growing food in a sustainable manner, so that we can again re-evolve as a people wherever we're going to be doing this. And we start where we are. If we're in St. Croix, if we're in Barbados, we're in Antigua, we're in the United States, we're in England, we drop our bucket there. However, we have to see that we're all coming together as these parts to make this whole for the Ra establishment of a great realm. I don't call them kingdoms. I don't call them queens, really, because it's a European vernacular. Kings and queens in Europe were tyrants. Whereas in our ancestors, you called it a suit within a suit. It's a whole different thing. And as an Esu and a suit, you are a true servant of the people. You are an example. I will repeat that. You are a model of what a true man or a true woman should be when you take on the responsibility of royalty. You are what the people are supposed to look up to as an example of how we are supposed to treat each other, obey, and live in harmony with the universal laws of nature, as we call Ma'at, perform the rituals, the offerings, and do the work so that we are always in communication with our ancestors and the powers and forces of the universe and nature of our creator. You're supposed to be that example. How you dress, how you move, how you deal with other people, you become the measure of what a man and a woman is supposed to be. So then you become the father of the community or the mother of the community by doing and by example.
Yes.
Not a tyrant.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And that's very important. And that I would want to thank my beloved Empress Nesut, ChenziRa Davis Kahina, Mutast, for being there. And I'm going to say this. She's like Asar. She's like serious.
Amen.
She's that. A lot of people revolve around her, and a lot of people she revolves around, because she is involved in doing all the things that she needs to do. And through her, I met her beloved sister queen, again, and that's Nesut, Dr. SandRa. And so you are like those sisters.
Give thanks.
Doing the work.
Give thanks.
Finding the parts and bringing them together.
Beloved NswNebKaRa, it has been so enriching. Thank you is not enough. It's not enough. I have to find some other words, you know. African Queen Mother Warrior, Sr.Dr, we really need NswNebKaRa to come back. you know, as we were, I miss you. You went someplace and I miss you. But I have to say,
I'm here.
yeah,
I'm here.
yeah. But you know, I have to say that I think your wisdom needs to be shared among the Pan-African movement, because there's an aspect in the Pan-African movement that does not allow it to function properly. It's like a four-wheeled vehicle where one or two of the vehicles, the wheels have dropped off and it's just going down the road like this. And you know, so something needs to happen. Beloved African Queen Mother Warrior, we need to fix it.
It's see, we do things together. I'm very grateful for what you were able to share in the NswNebKaRa, because it allowed for persons to get like a better context, so persons do not see PerAnkh Smai Tawi is like just, you know, like kemet, can't finish. That the intention is for that integration, that holism, and that we're here to serve. When persons refer to us as Nasu or Nasut, it's based on experience, yes, and it's based on journeying, yes, and it also comes with a certain humility. It's not to say that we don't know how to be forceful and direct and upfront and roll like elvises when we need to. However, it is to come to, you know, when we speak of queens and kings and our circle in the sphere that we're referencing, it is not like you're on a pedestal and you do the Barbie thing and you just turn and it's about beautification without any mindset, any thought process, or any contribution to the community. Queens and kings are servants to their people. They are not to just take up space and be attended to. They are to attend to and help build legacy and contribute to building legacy and offer that leadership and that guidance. And when we say leadership, we're speaking of it in the ma'atical space, again, based in truth, justice, order, reciprocity, balance, divine righteousness, and harmony. Keep that in the forefront. It's not to do it just because I am better than and I'm first and I'm
right.
It's
That's
not
right.
that
That's
type
right.
of haughtiness. And it's not to say that, you know, when we move, when we're dressed in our attire,
Hey.
we look like right. Right. You know,
We do that too.
we can do that. You know, it's a different kind of. It's not to be bourgeois in an
That's
elite
right.
space. It is to be regal and royal.
And to honor that aspect, to honor the divinity, and also to honor the divinity of the others. You know, when I am in the presence of you both, I'm in the presence of divinity. I am in the presence of majesty. I must conduct myself properly.
And it's reciprocated because that's what we gather when we're in your presence as well, Sister Dr. Sandra.
That's right.
It's important to because
that is right.
That's what you bring. That's what you command, and that's why when persons come, you know, why you think you about that and why you move and I said no. Let's shift that a little bit. Used to be when persons present themselves clean, engaged as diplomats, states, persons, etc., that you would actually, it would be like a very pleasant bow. Not that I am bowing. I do kisses to people when I meet them. I will stop and go all the way to the knees when I see, to give that energy of I respect the divinity that's present, that surrounds you. And I'm anticipating, and not even an anticipation of want, but reciprocate. That's reciprocity.
It's order. It's divine order. It's like,
and that's what we're working towards. Us using so many different adjectives to welcome and greet one another, because we seem to know collectively how to greet one another streetwise, and we yo, hey, my son, and we're just shifting our lingua and our engagement to take the time to recognize, to honor with a humility as well as a strength of how much we care when we say, I murder you. I'm saying it from a place of love and nurturing, cultivated respect for you. Not everybody can get that. And I mean, because some people don't give that to even be able to receive that. So I recognize that, but I will acknowledge space. Part of what we do in this particular broadcast is expanding that space. When we say building legacy, we're speaking in the context of interdisciplinary, transcultural media, yes, and broadcasting conversations, yes, and we're dealing with the actions and the perspectives and the different campaigns and movements and works and developments and global affairs and all of that, yes. And we're speaking of it from a Caribbean, African, Europe, Eurasian, ancestral, global space. That's literally that, all about the players. That's why when you look at our flyer, you're going to see things from the United Nations, UNESCO, the International Decade for People of African Descent initiated, you know, the works of the African Union. You're going to see the planet, the entire planet. That's why it's important that persons recognize that's where we're moving in that conversation, is to incorporate that. All of the comments that we're seeing, even on the chat on Facebook, these are the things that we're hoping to be able to share. We're definitely going to premiere this on YouTube so persons can add their questions and commentaries and stop and freeze and look and see what we're saying. Look at some of the transcriptions that are on the screen, because there's captions with this, and it does its best to spell even Kemetic terms, which is interesting. And recognize that we're moving in a versation that allows for us to bring authenticity to these raw evolutionary, not just re-evolutionary, but raw, lighted, illuminated evolutionary movements. And the recommendations, whether it's to engage in work and study, whether it's to start to listen for when persons are giving presentations or lectures or workshops, that you can learn about movement and breathing that help to keep your body strong, especially in these times where health is becoming a challenge for everyone. How do we engage in increasing our involvement around conversations? And I say con in general, that the body politics, wherever we live, are attempting to limit our involvement in these areas of police brutality. That's why we started and chose to move forward on, yes, we know what happened. Yes, we know that this is an ongoing common structure of killing our children before our very eyes, killing our men and our women before our very eyes, making us become desensitized. And so what we're asking is, be sensitive, be responsive, and engage with others that are doing the same. And you do it in the way that allows for action within yourself, the family, the village, the community, the nation, the region, and then globally. And the more we exchange, the more that we grow. And that's part of what we're doing.
I have something to, just one little thing to say here.
Yes, please share it, NebKaRa.
Yes, my beloved Empress SandRa, you mentioned the need for more of this to be exposed to more people in the Pan-African. And that brought to mind one of the things that I was taught by Dr. John Henry Clark, as well as Baba Heru, AfRaKa Samaj, as well as our illustrious teacher, Dr. Ben. We have to remember that in these times, in the 19th and 20th, and then into the 21st century, that most of us and our elders and our ancestors who were moving towards the Pan-African movement, etc., the intention is there and it has manifest. And what they've done is great. But there's something that we have to remember, and that is most of those individuals, their education about nation buildings was limited. and it was rooted more from a European or Eurasian perspective. Only now can we say that some of us in the diaspora as well as home are searching in themselves deep into their roots and now bringing out to manifest those systems of our ancestors. And to manifest those systems of ancestors, we have to align it with nature. Because ultimately, nature is everything. And so to the brothers and sisters and many of the movements at present, sometimes we ego trip on our attainment in the European certification system of being more European than European, and forget that in the past, we were their teachers, not their students. And the old adage goes, you reap what you sow. If in fact, most of our leaders are being educated with the seeds and the slips of European value systems and European worldview, then the logic tells us the harvest will be European perspective and European worldview. And so this is where I say, what helped me, my humility, is the practice of disciplines that include where you have to pay respect to your teacher and to those who are sharing their wisdom with you in a loyal fashion that may almost seem to be like you worshiping them. Like when you enter a martial arts training, proper martial arts training program, or a proper yoga training program, you give that respect to your teacher. And there's a lineage of teachers and students that goes back for thousands of years. And that's the respect that we don't get in our school systems and education systems. And so those are the things that help in the foundation. In some of the West African traditions and other African traditions throughout Africa, that still remains there, especially those who still practice some of those royal and regal family traditions. And so we grow up now not to respect royalty, because the Europeans who have developed, especially in the Americas, we know royalty is still is respected in Britain. You still have the Queen. But
no,
No,
I know, not you don't, but they still have their queen.
Yes.
They still have their queen. And in some communities in the Caribbean, they still give certain respect to the queen.
That's right.
Okay? We don't, and we know why. However, I'm saying this to say that in America, for instance, how we grow up, we don't have respect for the teachers. We don't have respect for our parents. We don't have respect for the authorities because they're not the good examples. Even the churches, we know that, for instance, the Catholic Church, for instance, how can you respect the Catholic Church when it's one of the largest institutions of pedophilia? You see what I'm saying? So that respect that we have to have for one another, the divinity in me, like the Namaste, respects and salute the divinity in you. We need to carry that in our discipline.
Yes.
When we're conducting our meetings,
Yes.
when we're having our affairs with one another, we need to start showing that respect because that is our culture. When you go on the temple walls, you see the brothers and sisters, they're in their best posture. They're on their knees. Sometimes they're down with their face to the ground. That's not something that is making you a lesser. It's training you to be humble.
Yes.
It's a part of a training process.
Yes.
And I went through it, and it has helped me so much. And I would advise my brothers and sisters to go into their culture, whichever one, even the Yoruba tradition and many of the tradition, it's there. Let's respect it. The brother who practice capoeira, we see how they give respect to their maestre. You give that respect because this is our culture.
Yes.
When the sun arises in the morning, the moon reflection is no more on the planet because the sun is shining. The stars, same thing. When light comes, you pay respect to light. When you become light, respect will be shown to you. And our purpose, without light, we know our body can't live. The same way the plants can't live. The chlorophyll and the actions of chlorophyll can't continue. The same with the melanin. The next thing, we need to be in the sun. We shouldn't be running from the sun. Only vampires run from the sun. We should be running to the sun and get that strength from the sun, the light, to be stronger as the people that we are. I'd just like to share that. So, brothers and sisters, it's about discipline. It's about humility. And it's about a process. And our writings on the PerAnkh include all of these things. It's there. So there is sort of like a little working process and system that we're implementing with the teachings on the PerAnkh to show that it's not something that comes out of China or something that came out of Japan or Korea with the martial arts or India. You know, all these things came right out of our ancestry right there in that continent that we call AfRaKa. Dua.
Giving thanks for the exchanges and the sharing from our illustrious guest, NswNebKaRa, AsarRa, Kasamsura Herishetapaheru of PerAnkh and Smai Tawi, PerAnkh Inc., the House of Life. We're looking forward to having more engaging conversation. A number of persons have shared commentary. I am light. They're asking for us to also share full disclosure, names, etc., details of the different references that have been made herein. It's always an honor and a privilege to join my illustrious, powerful, regal Sister Dr. SandRa Richards. We get a chance to really navigate and cover the globe. 2 hours goes by like that because of the amount of content and the amount of attention to detail that you bring in terms of keeping that global piece at the center of how we engage and always being unapologetic and direct on what our voice is and what our actions are. And for that, do I want to.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And we're very grateful.
Mother Warrior, before you close out, can we just remember the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines?
Always.
Right now.
And like maybe we should have that moment of reflection. And there are a number of organizations everywhere. If you just put St. Vincent in any Google search, you'll find different places that are already vetted. I know where we are, there's a number of drives to send resources to St. Vincent and the Grenadines following that very powerful Le Souffleur eruption. We know that in different parts of the Caribbean, the ash has influenced other parts of the Caribbean. And of course, this is going to impact our seas. It's going to impact a lot of other things for weeks, months, and possibly years to come. So we're asking persons, if you see those opportunities to be able to make a contribution, even if it's a small contribution. Just remember, if 1 million of us make a small contribution, it's going to help the people in and their families near and far in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because it's going to be a lot of recovery work for things to get back to any type of degree of normalcy. So we want to just highlight that. Thank you for reminding us to remember. And also, we're sharing a lot of support and energy to our sisters and brothers that are being exposed to different acts of violence around the globe. We may not have named them all because we would be doing that for more than 2 hours. We just are sending out that protective energy and those protective voices, and we're offering voice offerings, protection offerings, and much more from each and every one of us. I believe we've covered just about everything we need to cover for this afternoon. It's been an honor and a privilege. My sister, Dr. SandRa,
SndDr.
giving thanks to NebKaRa. And just remember that, culture heals humanity, land is our foundation, and spiritual harmony unifies us. When we're coming together discussing building legacy, it's building legacy. It is collective legacy. And we're here amongst those that desire to build and not break down, unless we're removing the vestiges that need to be removed. And that's a little different. And it's all integrated for us to build stronger and stronger with longevity at the source, so that we restore truth, justice, order, reciprocity, balance, divine righteousness, and harmony in all ways that facilitate us building legacy. Until our next broadcast, which will be May 15th, and we anticipate having some really wonderful sharings. We're looking forward to being joined by one of our illustrious sister queen grandmothers as well, Sharon Oshun Paris Chambers, coming from the Sisters of the Ankh, as well as just Google that name, Sharon Paris Chambers. It's going to bring up some powerful work and some powerful vibrations and meditations, and she will be joining us for our next broadcast. And we'll keep up with our list to just keep you engaged. Come with your questions, come with your comments, come with your sharings, and come with what you bring to help us keep building legacy. Much more. Hatap, hatap, hatap. Always a joy. Always a joy. Always a joy. I tell you, we could do this all day. I love it. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it.
So we off now?
Not yet, because we got to play a song. Watch what happens. This is how it goes.
Oh, beautiful. Okay.
I feel them on my shoulder. Begging me to drop bombs like boulders. As a cultural molder. They insist that I use my gifts as a lyricist to bear witness to the past, present, and future of African greatness, and always place emphasis on the beauty of blackness, and never digress into the common connotation of my color with slackness. Tell the people the truth, not petty myths like Loch Ness. Direct them to the proof of an African genesis, and be a portal through which they can access the inner emperor and the inner empress, because it's the duty of every man and every woman to manifest God in flesh. So we honor the body, the Ori, and the Ruach Kodesh. We say Hetep Shalom, Assalamu Alaikum, Jah bless cause this poem, and all the rest are for the ancestor. We stand upon their shoulder. So rise, you African sons and daughters. Let me bust the steel files and fold. You see the people dying, but you know not what they're dying for. You hear the children crying, but you know not what they're crying for. You tell me that you're trying, but you know not what you're trying for. How can we win the war if you know not what you're fighting for? You want to see more clearly, but your vision don't stretch very far. Get your head out of the clouds so you can see beyond the stars. Embrace Venus and plant your feet on Mars. Your mind should span galaxies, but you keep it locked behind bars. It's time to get grounded in the tradition which our ancestors founded. Every time we left it out, we tend to get pounded. By European ideology, we are confounded. But hearken your ear so you can hear when the echo bell has sounded. And have no fear, cause we are always surrounded by the ancestors. They're wrapped around my shoulders. And even when times get bad and cold, them's the times we get bad and bold. The spirit world is accessible, it's permeable and it's porous. The ancestors sit behind the veil patiently waiting for us. They implore us to join them in chorus, to fight against those who would detest and detour us. But some careless Ethiopians think that somehow the plantation owners now adore us. And if we stick our heads in the sands, our enemies will ignore us. But if that's what we think, then we're on the brink of extinction like Tyrannosaurus. No time to blink, time to link with that and those which came before us. Like the Sphinx, which is really Herishetapaheru, who is higher than Horus. None but ourselves can free our minds, and none but ourselves can ensure that we are victorious in a world of criminals. The righteous man and woman is notorious, but have no fear, stand firm by your God and also by your glorious ancestors. Our shoulders are their shoulders. They say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Well, what a beauty it is to behold that which is They insist that I use my gifts as a lyricist to bear witness to the past, present, and future of African greatness, and always place emphasis on the beauty of blackness and never the garrison to the common connotations of my cannabis slackness. Tell the people the truth, not petty myths like Loch Ness. Direct them to the proof of an African genesis and be a portal to which they can access the inner emperor and the inner empress. Cause it's a duty of every man and every woman to manifest God in flesh. So we honor the Baraka, the Ori, and the Ruach Kodesh. We say Hetep Shalom, Assalamu Alaikum, Jah bless cause this poem and all the rest are for the ancestors.
And we give thanks to being able to just share that from the illustrious, regal king, brother, warrior, Adrian Green. I call his name Adrian Green, Green, out of Barbados via the entire African world, being able to give word sound power for us to close out building legacy. As we said, until our next broadcast, we encourage everyone to live free, live safe, and definitely, most definitely live up to the best of your ability. Until our next broadcast, do all unto give thanks.